Hello, my name's Harry Badham. I head up the development function in AXA Real Estate in the UK. Just a brief introduction to AXA. We own and manage roughly 90 billion of real assets, spanning all types of commercial property, residential property, and also infrastructure assets. So we've got a great deal of experience across a lot of different investment classes. We, on the whole, are investing on a very long-term basis. We develop specifically, we like development specifically because we believe it allows us to create very long-term future-proof assets, and we prefer to be creating from scratch to avoid obsolescence. So for us, when we develop, when we appoint designers or appoint teams or envision the types of assets that we're creating, we see part of the value in creating the right design and specification. And we're talking specifically today about 22 Bishopsgate. And as an example there, we designed the building with much higher floor to ceiling heights, and Karen, our architect, will talk about that in a little while to explain the reason for that. And also we future-proof in terms of allowing higher capacities for occupation, because the future is unknown. There are certain things you can't go back and change. It's very difficult to go back and put extra lifts in a building if you haven't put enough in when you designed it and built it in the first place. So there's a certain amount of the way we create and develop assets that's around the design and specification, but there's an equal part around how we set up the operation and management of buildings. And I'm going to focus on that, a couple of specific things on that in this introduction. And specifically on the technology and how we embed technology into our developments and our buildings to allow us to future-proof them. I think that the key thing for us all in this is how we can do more with less. Using less energy, being more sustainable is really important to us. We have a very, very strong ESG background in the investments we make. And at 22, we've been able to use technology to do that. So we have a fault detection and diagnosis system being installed in the building on the Microsoft Azure platform, which basically analyzes 1 million data points every day and reconciles them against preset criteria and allows faults to be detected immediately and rectified in many cases immediately. In Microsoft's case study on this, we save about 20% of the energy just by doing that. So technology for us is a huge thing that allows us to do things that we've never been able to do before. It also gives us the ability to understand a building in a new way. So we've created a digital twin right from the word go using BIM, and I'm sure Andrew and Karen will talk a little more about that too, and how then we can use it as part of the management. And that comes on to my final point to talk about, which is about setting up that asset and property management. We're all in a slightly uncertain time about what the future of the office looks like, but what we do know is that people will congregate and cities will survive, and it's how assets can be flexible to deal with that. And that isn't necessarily just about design, it's about setting up the right approach to knowing that there will be evolution and the contemporary circumstances will change all the time. So at 22, we set up the infrastructure for this, but only now we're dealing with the reality of opening a building later this year and moving staff in early next year, when we'll still likely be facing the effects of the pandemic. The access barriers, for example, which we incorporated with a number of different ways to use them, we focused on how we can make that touchless and integrate it now into an app. So we've spent a lot of time changing the way that we're dealing with things to cope with those circumstances. And a lot of that is instilling that philosophy into the management team. So we've empowered our property management team there to fulfill, we have our commitments, and to fulfill our commitments. One of the things we've just completed doing is procuring the energy program for the building. And as part of that, as part of the sustainability commitments we've had, we've been able to secure 100% renewable energy for a very large building. So there are lots of things that we will keep doing and keep reassessing as we own and manage the building, add for sustainability and keep reacting to make it work for the long term. I'm going to hand over to Karen Cook now, who'll talk a little more about the original design of the building and how it's changed and how she's reacted to the brief.
Thanks, Harry. The Pinnacle Scheme, whose design for this site I led while at my previous practice, was designed in 2003 to 2005. Post-global financial crisis, the trend toward cognitive work aided by mobile computers already changed our work and life behavior. A new developer, Lipton Rogers, a new investor, AXA, and the city planners wanted a new approach. Its form would be simpler, acting as a foil for the variety of shapes surrounding it, the cheese grater, the gherkin, the walkie-talkie. 22 Bishopsgate would be designed for the individual, offering a qualitative experience that would encourage people to go to work in a tower in the city. Stuart Lipton introduced a development strategy called the vertical village, amenities outside the office space for the individual to meet others, to learn, to be stimulated, to relax. An active commuter park, which is a large bicycle park, an urban market, a maker space, co-working, a high-altitude glass climbing wall, a spa, and at the top, restaurants and London's highest free-to-access public viewing gallery. 22 Bishopsgate is the UK's first shell and core building to register for the Delos WELL building standard, a classification resulting in better fresh air, better daylight, greater ceiling heights, and encouraging activity, art, and craft. Technology informed the design at all levels. The glass skin is a closed cavity facade, fabricated by Gartner, permanently pressurized with its own mechanical system and with operable movable blinds, permitting the use of low iron glass while keeping out solar radiation. For optimum energy savings, blinds are controlled by a building management system, which the individual can override on his mobile phone app. In comparison to standard glazing, 22 Bishopsgate has 60% more natural light. In contrast to BCO guidelines, the increased ceiling height means more generous volume and greater daylight deeper into the floor. 23 facets comprising the form react to different sky conditions. Alternately transparent, reflective, or shimmery, the tower is defined by light. Art and craft are integrated into the architecture at large scale thanks to technology. Welsh glass artist Alexander Belashenko created his artwork directly in the computer, working with a German glass printer to fine-tune color codes for digital printing his powerful colors. A large entrance canopy and a new pedestrian passage crossing the site under the building surprise and enrich the pedestrian, commuter, and arrival experience. And now I'd like to introduce Andrew Ridley Barker, Operations Director for Multiplex Operation Europe.
Thank you, Karen, and hello, everybody. My name is Andrew Ridley Barker. I'm the Operations Director for Multiplex, as Karen just said. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to say a few words around 22 Bishopsgate, a very, very ambitious project and one that we're extremely proud to have been the principal contractor for. It's as I say, an ambitious project. It's 278 meters high. It's taken approaching 8 million hours to construct. At peak, we've had 1,200 people working in the project, and our records show that over 10,000 people have had a part to play in constructing the building. In terms of other sort of key statistics, for those of you who like statistics, we have 17,000 tons of steel within the building. That's nearly double the amount in the Eiffel Tower, and 110,000 cubic meters of concrete. The panels that Karen was talking about just now, there's over 10,000 of those, which require nearly 500,000 bolts. Now, the building's 62 stories high. And I'm very pleased to say that not one of those 500 bolts was dropped. As you can imagine, with 6,000 people walking on the city streets of London below, that would have been an absolute disaster. So for us, the project has been immensely challenging for many of those regards. Its sheer height, for example, means that we've had to breach the local airspace of London City Airport. And that required very complex and difficult negotiations with the Civil Aviation Authority. Issues and challenges which one doesn't simply have to deal with every day in the construction sector. So for us, a very challenging and rewarding project for all those reasons. But the ambition doesn't stop there, and something that was determined at the very outset of the project was that this would be the first project that would secure the WELL building standard, and not only secure it but achieve platinum, the highest certification being platinum. And that's something that we've worked hard with PLP and with the consultants and with Harry and the AXA team in order to develop and secure. And as Karen alluded to just now, that certification covers air quality, water quality, the light, which Karen mentioned just now, nourishment, fitness, comfort, and mindfulness. And those aspects have been ingrained throughout the project. And it's tremendous to see it now in its completed state. We actually have, as a contractor, have been very inspired by that WELL building standard and have leapfrogged on that. And now we have a standard within Multiplex Construction Europe for our own better buildings, our better workplaces. Typically, construction offices and welfare facilities are not the best. But being inspired by the WELL building standard and the work that we've done on 22 Bishopsgate, we have now built upon that WELL building standard and set a better workplaces standard for our offices and for our welfare that improves the quality of the workplaces for all of our own employees, but also of our subcontractors. And as I mentioned, and operatives working on the project. And as I mentioned, on a project like 22 Bishopsgate, at any one time, there may be 1,200 people working on the project. So creating a positive environment is something that we've seen the benefits of. We see that a workforce that are happy and want to come to work in a safe and productive environment is very, very beneficial for us as a contractor for getting the maximum possible productivity that we can. People want to come and work in good and safe environments where they're treated with respect and where the aspects as set out by the WELL standard, the WELL building standard, are fully adhered to. So we've adopted that now, and every single one of our projects in Europe now works to this standard. And I'm pleased that all of our welfare facilities, all our offices across all our projects now adhere to that. So for us, it's been a tremendous experience for that, not only because of the challenges that we've had to overcome in the construction of the project, but also in aspects like the WELL building standard, where we are able now to learn from that and implement it into our day-to-day activities, as I say, outside and beyond 22 Bishopsgate. So, Harry, could you just let us know, what does 22 Bishopsgate mean for the future of the office?
Thanks, Andrew. Future of the office is $1 million question right now. I think I have said on a few occasions that the pace of change in offices has really picked up as a result of what's happening at the moment. But we had seen there was already a lot of change happening. When we procured and started designing and setting up the vision for 22 Bishopsgate, Karen, myself, Stuart, and some of our advisors took a world tour. We saw what was happening in offices around the world, how businesses were behaving differently after the end of the last financial crisis, which I think threw up a lot of kind of philosophical change about what is an organization, what's its purpose. I think it saw the end of some of these very siloed organizations, and it saw an environment where the companies who were growing fastest were of the mindset, if I may paraphrase, of move fast and break things, and were far more openly networked businesses. So, for instance, we signed a lease with Amazon in 2012-13, and we had to completely rip up our standard lease because they wanted the ability to share with any company that they happened to be in a partnership with or looking at or working with. And so it forced our mindset of traditional offices to change a lot. And that environment, as we entered the start of 22 Bishopsgate, was already there. The groundwork was in place to move towards different types of working, very open, very collaborative, and even on a day-to-day design of an office, things were changing to be more agile, have different types of workplace for different types of role or different times of the day. So that was really built into how we created 22, and particularly the amenities and technology. So for instance, the technology that we embedded, we put connectivity everywhere. So whether that was Wi-Fi, whether it was 4G, future-proof for 5G, whether it was blown fiber optic to every floor, those things were fundamental to us create space that can be agile, flexible, and used in a number of different ways. For us, that was all about creating the right bones. A statement that's been used is long life, loose fit. And then for us in our leasing strategy for that building, to think about a multi-use building with lots of different tenants in it. And as you've all mentioned, this is a building of scale, so it'll be 10, 12,000 people. And for us, when we start thinking about the future, is that each individual office user, whatever sector they're in, whatever size they are, will be using the office in a similar way and will be benefiting from the critical mass of similar amenities. So that was where we introduced the concept of the vertical village, which was to create about 10% of the building dedicated to support, corporate and personal support facilities. So whether it's personal well-being, we have medical, beauty, we have gym, food, we have a 20,000 square foot market in the building. We have, as Karen mentioned, an active commuter park that can take up to 1,700 cycles. We call it an active commuter park rather than a bicycle park because, as we see now, some people run to work, scoot to work. So when we think about the future of the office, and particularly what's happening right now, we see that really, really accelerating. And the ways that people use office is going to change. And buildings that can react and evolve to that, fundamentally, the basics of a building are the same, but the way and the approach and the philosophy of allowing businesses, and particularly allowing the people for those businesses to use a building in the way that suits them, is going to be more and more important. I'm going to finish on that. I'm going to hand over to you, Karen. I'm just going to tee myself up to ask you this question. I don't know whether this is answerable, but Karen, I'm going to hand to you and ask you, how did the design and build process change throughout COVID-19?
Thanks, Harry. Touchless entry was already planned, as you mentioned, to reduce hassle and avoid long visitor queues. That proved prescient. Regular occupants can use opt-in facial recognition, and visitors can use a QR code sent with a meeting invite to their mobile phones, similar to boarding a train. So that means everyone can enter the building without touching a thing, without standing in a queue. Occupation density was planned at 1 person per 8 square meters, which was a new occupation density that arose after the global financial crisis. Yet you've seen that your occupiers have been fitting out at 1 person per 12 square meters, effectively leaving 50% spare infrastructure capacity. That means more lifts, more toilets, and more fresh air for a healthier environment, which will help people during this social distancing time. I'm now going to ask Andrew a question. 22 Bishopsgate was a highly ambitious project. How did you overcome some of the challenges that arose during the construction?
I think that for any construction project, the principal challenge is to synchronize and to mesh design, procurement, your supply chain, plant, materials, and labor, all to mesh and synchronize in concert with each other. And that's a challenge which every contractor will face on every project around the world. On 22 Bishopsgate, that synchronization, that intermeshing, that orchestration is taken to another level. It's a massive project. 1.2 million square feet gross internal. It's a very large project, and it is very high in a very congested city with zero laydown. So the challenges therein are manifold and magnified to a very large extent. And as a contractor, and this is what we do, we build such buildings around the world. But on 22, what we sought to do was to, given the verticality and the need for something like 100 vehicle movements into the project every single day, delivering materials for the project, getting the materials and getting operatives and materials and plant equipment up to the workface in a very efficient and controlled manner was one of the key challenges that the project faced. And we worked with a number of tech houses, I suppose you could call them, in order to generate very advanced software which would predict accurately the requirements for vertical transportation. And we developed what we called the vertical logistics planning system on the project. And that accurately modeled the supply and demand that would be taking place directly from the program. And that then informed our vertical access strategy. We found that to be of massive benefit, and working with those tech houses to develop that software for us was tremendous. And I suppose that's one of many challenges that we overcame over the course of the project, but one that sticks very much in my mind as being a key challenge for the project was that the sheer height of the building and the verticality and the need in such a congested city to minimize the number of deliveries, to make them as efficient as possible, and getting them people and materials to the workplace as efficient as we possibly could. Karen, I'm going to ask you a question. What systems and technologies have been incorporated to minimize the impact on people outside the building and the City of London?
Well, thank you, Andrew. One of the major concerns of the city is wind, of course. Wind is an issue in the city because London is a windy city adjacent to the Thames and in a low valley. So wind mitigation canopies and screens in glass and ultra-high strength fiber reinforced concrete were designed iteratively in both a wind tunnel and with Formula One automotive sport consulting engineers, whose powerful computers allowed finer-tuned fluid dynamic analysis, which helped us locate trouble spots faster and more precisely. So that was something that the City of London is now asking other larger schemes to do, is look at combining both the wind tunnel and the CFD analysis. 22 is also the first multi-occupier building in the city to use consolidated delivery, which directs all goods to an ex-urban warehouse where goods are stored until required by the tenant, whereupon they are compactly delivered to site by dedicated drivers in low-emission vehicles. This is really only possible thanks to basic management data collection on the computer. The forecast reduction of potentially 70% means deliveries can be entirely omitted at morning, noon, and evening peak times. Now adopted in city planning policy, 22 contributes to a vehicle-free public realm for a safer, cleaner, quieter, and more pleasant experience for everyone. I think what's really exciting about technology that we're using at 22 Bishopsgate is that it is really just a tool to help everyone's lives be better. So the whole idea is that everyone can experience and enjoy and control their lives. And I think that's a great thing about 22 Bishopsgate.
Thanks everybody for listening to us. I guess as a kind of concluding thought from me, 22 Bishopsgate for us is a building that deals with both the technology that's coming and the change that's coming, but is also fundamentally is a people-centered building to us, and that was the change. So I would like, and I hope we're soon traveling and convening again, I would like to invite anyone who wants to come and visit us in London. We'd be really happy to meet you and show you around.